On September 14, 2001, you said that America should invade Muslim countries and convert them to Christianity. You also said that they should get all the Muslims to boycott all airlines. When asked what the alternative modes of transportation were, you suggested flying carpets.
Hang on, she's reading my lines. Go on.
Question. First of all, as a 17-year-old student of this university, Muslim, should I be converted to Christianity? Second of all, since I don't have a magic carpet, what other modes do you suggest?
You dropped a line from the first quote. It was invade their countries, kill their leaders, and convert them to Christianity. And, you know, by the way, this shows, I thought it was just, you know, American public schools that produced ignorant people. This is what America has done after World War II, after the Korean War, after we won World War II, the emperor went to MacArthur and said, okay, we're ready to convert. And MacArthur said, well, actually, we don't convert people forcibly. Also, as he's described, he said he didn't know whether to convert them to Protestantism or Catholicism. But he put out the call for Christian missionaries to come to Japan, and they poured in. And you don't convert people forcibly, but Christian missionaries have been operating throughout Japan for years, and they certainly have religious freedom in Japan. And I would add, we haven't heard a peep out of it. After the Korean War, you might learn something. After the Korean War, this exact same thing happened. A call was put out for Christian missionaries to go into South Korea. The Christian missionaries poured in, and it is one of the greatest success stories of Christianity. You'll see at least on American college campuses. What mode of transportation? Take a camel. I'd just as soon not convert. Because I'm kind of a mean Christian. But if you want to get straight to the point, there you go.
As a female, as a Muslim, as a student of this university, I felt an obligation to kind of represent that. I got up and left because it was absolutely ridiculous. She's talking about political correctness, and right there she blatantly she stabbed me in the heart. That was rude. Use your camel? I mean, come on.
Tell me how much you know about being black.
Well, this isn't about being black.
Well, but you just said, you just made all these statements about how black people feel. Tell me how you know that. Yeah, you did.
This is not a book about black people. It is a book about white liberals. And I do know, and this is a fact, that once for years, Republican policies on crime and welfare, for example, were called racist. When they finally got implemented, after the O.J. verdicts, I might add, by Giuliani in New York, Reagan and Bush judges overall, tens of thousands of black lives were saved. That is a fact. I don't have to know about being black, but I know because you're to be dead.
Your facts are just a little shaky. I mean, you're saying that because black people, because liberals are what? Because liberals have abandoned black people now because. What? I don't get it. I don't understand.
I don't think liberals ever cared about black people. I mean, 5 minutes after the Civil Rights Act of '64, they start calling everything that has nothing to do with black people a civil rights issue. Abortion on demand, homeless rights.
So are you saying that liberals don't care about black people? Then are you saying Republicans embrace us in a warm, fuzzy blanket?
We're not embraced back. Yeah, we tried
So
to.
wait a minute. So the Southern strategy was a white liberal thing? No, it was a Republican thing.
No.
And also,
No,
Newt
that's-
Gingrich calls President Obama the food stamp president. That's not racist?
Chapter.
Wait a second. Listen.
Do you really think that was? Do you believe it was racist for Newt to say that the president is a food stamp president?
Well, he
Can you
wouldn't
dive
say
into
it
that?
If we could just skip,
I'll let you
I'm
say
not a
that,
big
but-
fan of Newt, so if we could just skip that for a second and get to the Southern strategy.
Yeah.
Because I've specifically disproved it.
I'm from one of those peasant cultures to which you so eloquently referred to. Although my great-grandparents had PhDs, so thank you for, putting me in that category as well as most of the people in this room. Thank you very much. My question to you is, when you say just drop nukes and daisy cutters and all this bullshit on people who live, people who are on this planet, human beings, what makes you different? What differentiates you from ISIS and Daesh and Wahhabism and all this? That cross around your neck. How dare you? Why are you
Why are you in this country if your culture's so hot?
By the Soviets. That's why. Because my grandfather was a political science PhD from Indiana University who came to this country for an education, and when he went back, he was assassinated. That's why.
That sounds like a really rotten culture, one that would assassinate a Soviet Union.
Hold on.
We don't assassinate our political science PhDs, so I would say right there we got a better culture.
She said her family was assassinated in the Soviet Union. I think we all agree we have a better culture. Okay? It wasn't.
Well, good. Let's all agree that the Soviet Union is a peasant culture then.
I'm not
We're getting on that.
The Soviets invaded Afghanistan. Get history correctly, okay? They invaded Afghanistan. They destroyed.
Okay, so why are you living in Afghanistan if it's such a great peasant culture?
Because there's another culture there still fucking killing people, that's why.
That's not a good culture.
Hey, you didn't answer the
I don't know if you
question. So it's a nice effort at deflection, but don't.
What makes you different
Because
from those extremists? When
this
you're
is just a
supporting the same
silly point
ideology?
about war. And look, if there's a point to going to war, there's a point to going to war. I'm saying if there is a point to going to war, I don't want any Americans dying for a regime change when you are going to have a President Obama come in and reverse the victory of that war. The question is whether it's worth going to war. I happen to think it is, but it's going to be a long conversation. The point is, apparently you do come from a peasant culture if you are here.
That doesn't make any sense at all. I think you call me brown. I came from Turkey.
So why aren't you there?
Because I love this country.
You come to this country.
I love this country. That doesn't mean I hate my former country. That means I love this country. You know why? Because it isn't a Christian nation. It isn't a nation just for white people. Because I believe in the First Amendment. Because I believe in what America stands for. Unlike you.
But it was a country created by white people, and the only way to the only way we're going to prevent any portions of the globe from not entirely becoming a place where a political science PhD will be assassinated and women are at risk for female genital mutilation and honor killings, is if we stop those cultures from coming here. The only way to stop mass migrations and refugees is for the entire world to be no different from any other place. And we'll all be living in Afghanistan, and who's going to suffer the most? The poor, the weak, women, children, plants, animals, and any victims of earthquakes, tsunamis, or Nazis. Without America out there, you just have a whole globe.
we've all had been discussing your book on camera.
Yes, I've heard.
So, good, you should be pleased. So, Whoopi would like to
I just
start.
have a couple questions, actually. In your book, you devote an entire chapter to single mothers.
Yes.
And what happens to children raised in single-parent homes. You title the chapter, Victim of a Crime, Thank a Single Mother. What is your issue with single mothers? Because I know you don't have any kids. I mean, maybe you have stepkids. I don't know. I shouldn't say that. But, and I just, before you answer, I just want to say, you said that single motherhood is like a farm team for future criminals and social outcasts. 70% of inmates in prisons come from single-parent homes. Hollywood actresses using single motherhood as a way to promote their careers, and it says, you say it's very selfish for a single mother to have a baby without a father. So I'm wondering.
Yeah, well, we now have 30 or 40 years of social science research. I mean, I'm just citing, this is, dressed up numbers crunching. I'm just giving the numbers. 80% of the inmates in prisons were raised by single mothers. About 70% of the runaways of the child, juvenile delinquents, juvenile murderers, juvenile rapists, raised by single mothers. And the point is, this didn't happen by accident. The illegitimacy rate alone has gone up over 300% since 1970. And as I describe in my book, this was a specific plan by the left, attacking the nuclear family. The most famous example.
Go back to the. I know you want to. I'm sorry. I know you want to do this whole left thing because that's what you do. That's your act.
No,
but
it's
what
I
do want to know, because a lot of what you've cited in terms of this, just specifically this, is based on sort of not great research, because we've seen this research discounted time and time again. But why would you say Hollywood actresses using single mother? I take offense to that, of course, as you can understand, because having been a single mother, I don't think it was something I used as a tool.
The point is, well, I don't think you've done it in the last few years, and this is, it has become...
Are you talking about in the, I'm sorry, say this again? You talked about you talked about actresses in the last few years.
Right, that's why I say it's the new thing, as opposed to the sex tapes.
Why don't you come down as hard on the fathers who aren't there, rather than the women who actually raised their children?
I'll answer that, because the title is Guilty Liberal Victims and Their Assault on America. And the point of the book is, in example after example, of how people play the victim, are exalted in this society, have doors open for them, when in fact they're the ones victimizing others. I've never heard anyone say, unsung heroes, unwed fathers. How does he do it? He has 4 children with 3 different mothers. How did he have the time to do that? You do have, as I describe in that chapter, Hollywood, mainstream media, the New York Times, women's magazines exalt.
Ann Coulter is here. The always controversial conservative author is out with a brand new book. She rails against liberals for always playing the victim game. She says the Democrats and liberals in the mainstream media are trying to destroy America. She's also claiming that after we canceled her appearance here yesterday, that we were banning her for life from the Today Show. So it's going to be fun talking to her in just a couple of minutes when Ann Coulter joins us live.
All right, I'm getting out of here. No.
Her latest book is Guilty Liberal Victims and Their Assault on America. Ann, good morning. Nice to have you here.
Good morning. It's great to be here.
I want to talk about Burris in a second, but let me just get to this little controversy. You've been all over the blogs in the last day or so. We canceled your appearance here on Tuesday. And from what I've been reading, you thought you were banned for life from the show. Were you behind that report?
No, I didn't say that. That was from a reliable news report that, by the way, has never had to retract a report on exploding GM trucks. But I do note that, like NBC.
Do you think, though, that much was made of this, and maybe you helped fan the fire here a little bit to make a controversy?
No, I don't think I'd be sitting here now if it hadn't been a headline on Drudge. But let's get to the book, because I do want to talk about the book.
But we've had you on so many times in the past. After every book, you've always been invited back. Why would you all of a sudden be banned?
Why? I don't know. I mean, that's not for me to answer what your motives are. We traded you out for Tony Blair yesterday.
And I think that's a pretty good switch.
You had more than Tony Blair on for 4 hours.
Yeah, right. But you were in your slot where you were supposed to be yesterday morning was Tony Blair.
And Rachel Maddow and various gossip columnists and a bear.
Afterward.
The point is, I was canceled twice, and it wasn't until the Drudge Report ran a headline on its own reporting, and the Drudge Report has never had to retract a report.
You know, the book is called Guilty, Ann Coulter. I'm glad you're back.
Oh, so am I. Thank you.
It's good
nice
to be
to see you again.
All right, we are going to, by the way, you're not banned for life, obviously, okay? Your next book comes out.
Thank you. Obama did. So, yeah, there's been a lot of excitement, some of which I'm not that thrilled about. But is he an effective president? Well, how do you judge that? What did he run on? What did he promise? I think none of his supporters, maybe some of them, really just thought it would be fun to have this tacky billionaire in the White House. I think most people thought, no, he's the only one raising the issues we have been dying to have some president raise. And, you know, screw you Republicans, screw you Democrats. We're going to put this nut in the Oval Office because he will at least put Americans first and not Wall Street first. And has he done that? Well, in 7 months, he's really going after MS-13. He's attempting to prevent terrorists from coming into the country. The courts, we're getting massive resistance from the Democrats, as usual, as we got during the civil rights era. But he'll win in the end. He's interviewing for the wall. He has a fantastic attorney general. He has a fantastic head of ICE. So as for what he has promised and whether he's implementing it, I'd give him a B. I'm looking for an A by the midterms.
What's going on, guys? I'll play the clip in just 1 second. I just want to give you a brief synopsis. Basically, Joy Behar from The View on her own show on CNN tries to make the claim that liberals are more hate speeched against than conservatives and Republicans, which then forces Ann Coulter to give her a huge smackdown. Like the video if you're new, make sure to subscribe and share the video as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one.
Now, you know, Ann, I have to tell you, Anthony Weiner had some white powder sent to his house with a threatening letter. And, you know, Louise Slaughter had a brick thrown into her storefront. Stupak is getting threats. People are putting coffins on Democrats' lawns. This kind of hate speech that's going on right now has to stop.
I wouldn't bring it up, except that it happened, you know, 2 nights ago here. Yeah, okay, and 200 kids were bringing rocks and sticks to a speech of mine. And I've gotten white powder, and I've been attacked on my property. You don't hear conservatives whining about it all the time. A liberal gets one piece of hate mail, and suddenly Paul Krugman is blubbering on the op-ed page of the New York Times. That's why, by the way, I mean, the only thing responsible people can do, responsible people on air, responsible elected officials, is to try to give public figures some privacy. In a country of 300 million people, there are going to be some crazy people out there. And I note that it has become a passion of people on a different cable network to reveal the addresses of conservatives.
Well, we don't like, but that's the problem.
On our property.
But that is the problem with hate speech. It begets other hate speech, and you know we can have.
No, but I'm saying they're going to be crazy people. You have responsible liberals, allegedly responsible adult liberals out there trying to get conservatives attacked.
Oh, come on!
This guy Francois.
Most of the hate speech is directed towards liberals, and you know it right now. You have a case maybe in the 60s. In the 60s, you have a case. Madness. That is, listen, and speaking of whining,
Joy,
Eric Cantor's been whining about how he got in trouble. Somebody had a bullet shot through his head, or through his house, by the way. Yeah, he's whining too, so they whine on the right also.
You or Anthony Weiner could show up at the Republican National Convention. You could show up at the University of Mississippi. You could show up at Bob Jones University, and you wouldn't need a bodyguard. There is not a conservative in America who can go to a college campus in America without a bodyguard.
Listen.
Do not tell me that this is a bigger problem for liberals. It's not even equal.
It's a totally bigger problem
madness.
for liberals.
We just don't whine.
The fact that they're sending hate mail and threatening Bart Stupak is a big problem. But, you know, let me tell you something.
I'll put my hate mail up against his any day.
Okay, just FYI, guess last night Glenn Beck, your friend Glenn Beck, that other nut job, he unveiled the I Hate Glenn Beck Club, and guess who's a member?
You?
Me. I'm so excited. This is like being on Nixon's enemies
Congratulations.
list. I'm so happy. You can't even imagine. But he skipped Whoopi, Al Gore. He skipped Stephen King. You know, he skipped a lot of people, but I'm so privileged to be on that list.
You got to put that next to your You got to put that next to your Costco club card.
Okay. And thanks. Always a pleasure.
She's been called everything from a pundit extraordinaire to a right-wing telebimbo. But one thing Ann Coulter has not been called is understated. In her latest book, Slander, Liberal Lies About the American Right, the controversial author takes on big media, big government, and most of all, liberals. Ann Coulter, good morning. Nice to see you.
Nice to see
all right,
you.
So your main thesis, Ann, is that liberals really misrepresent conservatives and the conservative movement. Isn't that accurate?
Yes, a little bit more than that, and that is that political debate with liberals is basically impossible in America today because liberals are calling names while conservatives are trying to make arguments. And when every one of your arguments is characterized as an attempt to bring back slavery or resegregate lunch counters, it's a little hard to have any sort of productive debate. I mean, I have no problem with invective, obviously, but the name of my book isn't invective, it's slander, and I think there ought to be a point to the invective.
What are some of the big liberal lies that are out there in your estimation?
I don't rank them, but
I'm not asking you to either. Just tell me what you think they are.
I would say it's really all the same lie, which is conservatives are either stupid or scarily weird, and therefore you don't have to deal with their ideas. Just set them aside. This is a crazy person. It's a Nazi, someone who wants to engage in racism, sexism, homophobia. So don't listen to that person's ideas. Take a quote out of context and dismiss that idea. The idea that Ronald Reagan was stupid, which I document at great length in my book. I mean, that is a stunning, stunning fact. The man, the bumbling old guy who won the Cold War, the way he was demeaned and attacked as being stupid. Meanwhile, when he was going into his second term, there was a spate of special interest articles on senility and senility, growing senility, and how old Ronald and he got encroaching senility. Meanwhile, half of the Supreme Court justices were older than he was, and I didn't notice any of the liberal media asking that Justice Thurgood Marshall or Justice Brennan or Justice Blackmun resign, though they were deciding life and death issues from the Supreme Court.
I think I do have to bring up a section of the book where you talk specifically about me, and this is not where you call me the Ava Braun of liberalism, which I'll ask you about. The affable. Oh, thanks. That makes me feel so much better. But you talk about the media bias against Ronald Reagan and use a quote and open from the Today Show where we say, an airhead, Ronald Reagan is an airhead, and we're quoting Edmund Morris. But frankly, in the book, you make it sound as if I was saying that rather than Edmund Morris. And I guess one of your problems is with even using that is that he said he was an apparent airhead, and we failed to say apparent airhead. And during the course of the interview with Edmund Morris, I really conducted an extremely challenging interview with him because he did eviscerate Ronald Reagan in his book. It was a very, very unflattering portrayal. The Reagans were very unhappy with it. Conservatives were very unhappy with it. Afterwards, Edmund Morris was unhappy with the interview, and Nancy Reagan called to thank me for my line of questioning. So I'm just wondering how that jives with your contention that somehow I'm a Ronald Reagan basher.
Well, I didn't call you a Ronald.
I do know what the Democrats' presidential candidate said about those abuse photos. He blamed it on the American character. If we're going to have hate speech, when John Kerry says...
He didn't blame it on the American character.
No,
don't talk over each other. He didn't.
What he said was the abuse at the prisons is a natural outgrowth of the American hubris in going into that war. That is as close to an attack on the American character, blaming this on the American character. As you can see, I assume those are the Al Franken fans who believe that this is an outgrowth of the American character. Look, I don't know what Rush Limbaugh said, but if we're going to have hate speech, I'd just as soon not have it be directed at Americans.
You know, okay, go ahead. This is why I brought my bag.
What, are you going to throw it at her?
No, I want to show you, because this is when we start talking about what's true and what isn't. And I'm sure that John Kerry didn't blame this on the American character, but I want to give you an example of how...
He said it was an outgrowth of the American hubris that took us into this
Was it the
war.
American... Well, it was an outgrowth of the hubris. There's no doubt about that, of this administration.
Hubris.
I mean, there's no doubt about that.
This is the exciting portion where we go through the footnotes of my book.
Well, while he's
been waiting.
No, I got it. I got it right here. This is how reliable Ann is. Let me just read something. This is an absolutely true story. Treason came out about a week before I had to finish my book, about 10 days. So I didn't have a chance to go through it the way I went through slander. So I didn't go through your book for my book. So a few weeks later, after my book was to bed, my wife and I went out to dinner early. I put treason in my library with the books. And my wife and I are going out the back way.
She'll autograph it for you if you'd like.
Yeah, I'm sure. Good. I mean, good. I'll take, whatever. Anyway, so Franny's coming with me, and she says, I got to put on lipstick. So she goes back to get on some lipstick, and I look in the bookshelf, I see treason, I say, Andy, that was my assistant, I said, I bet you I can find a lie in the book before Franny gets her lipstick on. So I pull it out, and I just go like, boom, and I turned it to, I was going like this. And I turned it to, and I scanned the pages, and I see New York Times. And whenever I see New York Times, I know Anne's lied. So here it is. New York Times columnist Thomas Friedman sniffed that racial profiling was not, quote, civilized. He blamed 20 years of relentless attacks by Muslim extremists on, I quote, religious fundamentalists of any stripe. Let me say that sentence again. He blamed 20 years of relentless attacks by Muslim extremists on, I quote, and then in quotes, religious fundamentalists of any stripe. Well, Andy had been my researcher. He knew what to do. He nexused religious fundamentalists of any stripe. Boom. He got it. It actually highlights it. You've nexused. So this is what it was. It was a December 26th New York Times op-ed piece by Thomas Friedman called Naked Air. And in it, he suggests that they make people fly naked. He says, think about it. If everyone flew naked, not only would you never have to worry about the passenger next to you carrying box cutters or exploding shoes, but no religious fundamentalists of any stripe would ever be caught dead flying nude. But let me read the sentence again, Ann. So wait a minute. This is how reliable that it's Kerry blamed the American character for this.
Okay, you read the sentence, and I want to give her a chance.
He blamed 20 years of relentless attacks. He blamed 20 years of relentless attacks by Muslim extremists on, I quote, religious fundamentalists of any stripe.
Okay. You don't have a backpack, but...
No, I do have a watch, if you could keep an eye on it for these long, boring stories, because I would like equal time, and...
I am trying to give everybody equal time. Please go ahead.
If this whole debate is going to be about Ann Coulter, I'm just not prepared on Ann Coulter. Liberals think that you can't paraphrase an article. Conservative books would be nothing but an Encyclopedia Britannica of the entire droning, boring article. You have to attach them all. You can never paraphrase something. My paraphrase was absolutely accurate. Thomas Friedman is talking about how to keep the airline safe after 9/11, after 20 years of relentless attacks. Senator Norm Coleman.
Okay.
Oh, that polite decorum of the liberals. He is talking about how to respond to the relentless attacks by Muslims on American airlines, on American embassies, on Americans, on Italian cruise ships, and so on. And what his facetious proposal is, he says after an attack like 9/11, there are two solutions. We can either learn to live with much higher levels of risk, or we can be much more controlled as a society. On a side note, I have another solution. It's a little something I've worked up. I like to call it racial profiling. But his suggestion is that we fly naked because two advantages to that. One is you'd catch the guys with the box cutters, and second, it would be a deterrent to religious fundamentalists of both stripes, or of all stripes. That is Muslim extremists. We really, I hate to shock liberals on this one, but the Amish extremists have been very quiet recently. The Mormon extremists have been very quiet recently. They're not the ones we need to be looking for at airports. This nation is under attack, and the refusal of the left to admit after a dozen attacks on America and America's interests by men who have identical hair color, eye color, skin color. You could use one of those paint chips for the skin color. All speaking Arabic to one another. Half of them are named Muhammad. But liberals pretend we have no idea who we're looking for. But their testy George Bush didn't stop 9/11. But don't look for, Arabic men speaking, or rather Muslim men speaking Arabic to one another, named Muhammad.
To have with us Ann Coulter. Good morning.
Good morning.
I think we've all had been discussing your book on camera.
Yes, I've heard.
So, good. You should be pleased. So, Whoopi would like to
I just have a couple questions, actually. In your book, you devote an entire chapter to single mothers.
Yes.
And what happens to children raised in single-parent homes. You title the chapter, Victim of a Crime, Thank a Single Mother. What is your issue with single mothers? Because I know you don't have any kids. I mean, maybe you have stepkids. I don't know. I shouldn't say that. But, and before you answer, I just want to say, you said that single motherhood is like a farm team for future criminals and social outcasts. 70% of inmates in prisons come from single-parent homes. Hollywood actresses using single motherhood as a way to promote their careers, and it says, you say it's very selfish for a single mother to have a baby without a father. So I'm wondering.
Yeah, well, we now have 30 or 40 years of social science research. I mean, I'm just citing, this is, dressed up numbers crunching. I'm just giving the numbers. 80% of the inmates in prisons were raised by single mothers. About 70% of the runaways of the juvenile delinquents, juvenile murderers, juvenile rapists, raised by single mothers. And the point is, this didn't happen by accident. The illegitimacy rate alone has gone up over 300% since 1970. And as I describe in my book, this was a specific plan by the left, attacking the nuclear family. The most famous example.
Go back to the. I know you want to. I'm sorry. I know you want to do this whole left thing because that's what you do. That's your act.
No,
but what I do want to know, because a lot of what you've cited in terms of this, just specifically this, is based on sort of not great research, because we've seen this research discounted time and time again. But why would you say Hollywood actresses using single mother? I take offense to that, of course, as you can understand, because having been a single mother, I don't think it was something I used as a tool.
The point is, well, I don't think you've done it in the last few years, and this is, it has become.
Are you talking about in the? I'm sorry, say this again. You talked about you talked about actresses in the last few years.
Right, that's why I say it's the new thing, as opposed to the sex tapes.
Why don't you come down as hard on the fathers who aren't there, rather than the women who actually raised the children?
I'll answer that, because the title is Guilty Liberal Victims and Their Assault on America. And the point of the book is, in example after example, of how people play the victim, are exalted in this society, have doors open for them, when in fact they're the ones victimizing others. I've never heard anyone say, unsung heroes, unwed fathers. How does he do it? He has 4 children with 3 different mothers. How did he have the time to do that? You do have, as I describe in that chapter, Hollywood, mainstream media, the New York Times, women's magazines exalting single motherhood, movie after movie about single motherhood, book after book.
Are you married?
Sisters are doing it for themselves.
Are you married? Are you married?
No, but it wouldn't change the difference of the facts I cite.
Do you have kids?
No, and it wouldn't change the difference.
Well, it would if you had children. You know more what you were talking about.
Do you want children? Because I do realize that there are mothers who are divorced, and you don't blame them as much, and there are mothers who are widowed. But there are women who do want children. I'm not talking about the teenagers, the irresponsible and so forth, and need to be loved. We can perhaps, go with it. But there are women who do want children.
Yeah, that's what I write
and
about.
Single mothers.
And how selfish it is. That's precisely what.
And can take care of these children and give them happy homes. Or adopt these children.
Okay, no, I am not, and nor are the studies.
Racism, all those things.
Absolutely not. You are wrong about that, and that is the interesting.
Kill anybody. That's all I'm saying.
No, of course it's not every. The point is, you look at it from the other end. When you look at the prison end, and no, it is not true that I'm leaving out race. There is, in fact, I cite a study by the Progressive Policy Institute, a liberal institute, saying that if you take single motherhood out of the equation, the black and white crime rates are exactly the same. So you take everything else out. Single motherhood is not good for children. That is a fact, and it is a fact that it is promoted.
I would like to ask you, because there's some nuggets of truth that you have in stuff that you write, but I don't see any compassion that you have. Do you go out and do you talk to single young girls about trying not to, to use birth control? Are you trying to be part of the solution?
Well, sure,
as opposed
of
to just
course
judging and throwing out stuff.
Look, the more non-judgmental we have been about the mothers, the more real victims have been created.
Can I ask you
millions
something?
and millions per year. I mean, it's not like this is some inevitable number that we must have of children being raised by single mothers every year. It wouldn't have gone up by more than 300% since 1970.
Let's move on that topic because you call it liberal victims. You know, the biggest victim this week is your girlfriend, Sarah Palin. She is whining about everything. The media was wrong.
The media was horrible.
By the way, she was a child born out of wedlock.
The media attacked her daughter's unborn child.
She's acting like a victim now, and why is it just liberals who are victims? Give me a break.
No, but the point of the book is not to say that there aren't any victims. Of course there are victims. That's my point.
Victims put together there.
Liberals play the victim while creating real victims. I'm not saying there's no such thing as victim, but can we get back to what you were attacking me for when I wasn't here?
Which was good to have black celebrities. Yeah.
See, now
I've never heard my book. Well,
no,
I just want to respond.
Follow up on what we were saying about you're saying that they identify with their black side, and we had something to say. What did you
think that I was trying to read people's minds? I believe someone said, or that I've had some personal experience with them. To the contrary, as I cite in the book, I am talking about things they have done and said. Barack Obama writes his first book. I think it was his first book, his autobiography, "Dreams from My Father." He identifies with the father who abandoned him. He met one. I read the book.
He praises his mother off with it. Can I just move on? We don't have that much time.
Wait, you guys attack me for it and I can't respond. Halle Berry accepts the Academy Award. Okay, just let me answer.
Barack Obama felt
Halle Berry accepts
the truth. We are not attacking you. You wrote something provocative.
Read aloud like you're reading Mein Kampf, and I just did.
Can I just read a section aloud?
Yes, and read it like you're reading Mein Kampf again.
I don't think I did that.
I think you